We may not be style experts, but we know some physical disabilities can mean fashion limitations.
So, how can we find more adaptive clothing for people of all abilities?
This is Enable, the Disability Podcast, where we'll share stories, experiences, support, resources, and more for people with disabilities and different abilities. We are at Enable Podcast on social media. My name is Jeff Herbert.
And my name is Kurt Hauer. We're talking with Hanan Tantush, whose fashion company, Intotum, makes adaptive clothing for people with disabilities. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be on the podcast.
Please start off by telling us where you got the idea to make adaptive fashion.
So the idea to begin in Totem became just as the idea to make adaptive clothing that would make my grandfather's life easier. So that was years ago, back when I was about 16. I was watching him go through cancer. And as a result of the cancer, he had to have his bladder taken out and replaced with a stoma bag. And so having the stoma bag, having the urostomy now kind of right on his waistband, it meant that all trousers suddenly became really difficult for him. And so, for anyone that doesn't know what a stoma bag is, it, actually just totally replaces the bladder. And so obviously it's going to fill up throughout the day. And he doesn't want too much pressure on it. But traditional trousers became really complicated, became too tight. And also a lot of shirts and t-shirts kind of highlighted the bag, especially anything slim fit. And so he became really self-conscious of clothing. And the only solution that was presented to him, by the doctors and the nurses that were looking after him was, sweatpants and tracksuit bottoms and hoodies and things like that. And this is a really smartly dressed guy in his 70s at the time. He did not want to wear tracksuits out of the house. So I kind of went off on the hunt for a solution for him. And at first, I thought it was just an internet barrier. I thought, he doesn't know how to find what he's after. And quickly discovered that it was actually a huge gaping hole in the industry within fashion and clothing that had not been addressed. And all of the options out there were either tracksuits or honestly just so medicalized and things that you would not want to wear or put a loved one in. And so that was kind of the first eye-opening experience I had to adaptive clothing and the fact that, people with physical disabilities are not being catered for in their clothing at all. But I actually already was making clothing. So I have been making my clothes since I was about 10, 11. Um, and, I remember like kind of bargaining with my mum to get a sewing machine. I was like, what can I do to earn a sewing machine? Because I wanted to start making clothes. And that was because I didn't like the way that clothes felt. I remember kind of getting upset in fitting rooms. I didn't like the way they fit or the materials. And at the time, I didn't have a explanation for this. And it wasn't until I was 19 that I actually got my diagnosis with ADHD and with being neurodivergent and realizing that actually, okay, this has an answer, that this is why I'm really sensory sensitive to a lot of materials and textures. And so that ethos is what I took forward into in Totem. And the brand only really came to be in 2023 when I was in my final year of university. And I had been making adaptive clothing ever since. I've been doing custom orders for people throughout my time at university. I was trying to, build up a collection and a range for people with disabilities. But I always thought I would then go work somewhere. I have no business training. I was 20 and I didn't have any funding to start a business either. So I really thought there would be a job out there, there'd be somebody that cared about adaptive clothing and would take me on with all of the knowledge I built up. And I quickly realized they didn't care. And that was, a really disheartening moment, obviously, to kind of start having experiences going out into the industry, working for other designers. But it also was a real pivot point and a kind of the fuel I needed to make me actually start this as a business and launch it as in Totem itself. So I launched that whilst I was graduating and then have been growing it ever since.
Well, Hanan, I was reading a little bit about your story, and I noticed that your granddad had multiple bouts of cancer. And it seemed to me that he was pretty resilient. And I was wondering if you could just tell us a little bit more about him.
Oh yeah, my granddad's I mean, he's my favorite person. Shouldn't say that, I'll just boost his ego. But he, is no, he's so resilient that, he's been through cancer 3 times, and every single time he really just bounces back, and that's why when he got the stoma, it was really different for us as a family because my granddad, he really does bounce back from it all and does remain positive every single time he's ill. I mean, he's been ill since we got told, um, you know, 18 months ago to come and say goodbye to him because he was in the hospital and they said, "This is it. You've got about 24 hours." And it was awful. And, the doctor said, "There's no way he's going to survive this." And he did every single time he manages to honestly, we don't know how, just incredible man, and so he's always really remained positive throughout all of these, health struggles, but with his stoma, that was why it was kind of a real shift in his confidence and the fact that I really saw him kind of draw back from who he is as a person. He loves sports, he loves seeing his friends, and he stopped doing that. He's such a sociable guy, but his clothing was blocking him from being himself. And that's why I really felt that, this was a problem that needed a solution.
That's great. Well, tell us a little bit more about the name and what does Intotum mean and why did you choose it?
When I was looking for what to call the brand, I was doing my research. I remember going on like a random name generator. I did all of that everyone does to try and figure out what to call the brand. And Intotum had a different name, I think, for about 2 weeks. And then I just didn't like it. Nothing I was coming up with felt like it really encompassed what the brand was about. And so I set out to kind of find a word that captured the feeling of Intotum rather than, just being adaptive clothing. I wanted to show what Intotum's all about. And so when I found the word Intotum, I studied Latin in school and so did my grandfather. And Intotum is Latin for all together or all as one. And I just really felt it, encapsulated everything that I want it to be. I want this to be a community mission. Everything we make is co-created and co-designed. We have our community test it and wear it for a long time before we ever release a product. And so I wanted the name to really show that. And it's also lovely the fact that in totem has been known to mean unbroken. And I think that really captures the spirit of the disabled community as well.
Wow.
So, how does adaptive fashion work and who is it made for?
Well, adaptive fashion is really for anybody. At its core, it's obviously for the disabled community, anybody that struggles a little bit more with clothing. But adaptive clothing can be worn by absolutely anybody. That I have this comment a lot actually when we post a TikTok on Instagram of someone saying, "I really love that top or that coat and I'd like to wear it, but I don't want to take a piece away from somebody that needs it more." And the response always either from myself or often other customers and supporters will jump in there and reply to the comments for us and say, "No, no, go ahead, like wear it. We'd love to see you in it." Because, adaptive clothing is literally for everybody. We just make it easier for the people that need it. So, by replacing buttons with magnets or making sure all of the materials are soft and sensory friendly and stretchy, that means that anybody can wear it. It gives you back that independence that we're all craving all the time, especially the amount of people that acquire their disabilities later in life. It means that you've lived your whole life, you've, got your style, you know who you are as a person, and suddenly to be left with just the option of sweatpants is really just takes away a whole part of who you are and your identity. And I want to be able to give that back. And so if you don't have a disability, and you like my clothing, you can wear it. It does not detract from the disabled experience.
Outstanding. Well, I was wondering maybe if you could help me. I have something called ankylosing spondylitis. And believe it or not, I have trouble getting my pants off. So when I'm trying to put on a pair of jeans or slacks, especially if I'm having trouble with my hip, it's very difficult. So I'm just curious if you had a suggestion of something I might try.
Yeah, so we actually make a trouser that would kind of combat this. and make it easier for you. And the key issue we see with trousers is that they're just really difficult to pull on because the actual opening, the waistband of trousers, is too small when you think about it. That's why Beyonce has a song talking about jumping to put your jeans on, because we're all used to that experience of having to literally jump into our trousers. And who wants to do that? It should be comfortable. And so we try and take the ethos of, okay, what's the most comfortable trousers out there? Elasticated waistbands, leggings, things like that. But how can we make that feeling into a pair of jeans? And so what we do is we use side openings. So rather than having just one front fly, one zipper fly, our trousers open at both sides with Velcro. So it's much easier, and so they open much wider, they flap open instead of, just the small zip, and it also means we take away the fiddliness of a zip for anyone that struggles with limited dexterity by having that Velcro. But all of our trousers not only are made from a stretch material, so they don't look stretchy, but they've got, spandex and elasticane in the weave of the material. We also always elasticate the back waistband as well.
Great. I'll have to look that up and try a pair.
Absolutely.
Do you have a favorite piece of clothing that you've created?
Oh, that's a
Or is that
difficult
hard to
one.
choose?
Because I mean, I love every piece we put out there, but I think one of the pieces that I love the most, because I love seeing people's reaction to it, would have to be our wheelchair trench coats. I love them so much because when I started, in the very beginning of Intotum, before it was Intotum, and I was just trying to make clothing that would make life easier, I was working with a lot of local charities as well. And I remember working, especially with a client who, she was saying that she just feels the coats that she's offered are just these huge ponchos that cover the entire person. They go over the entire chair. And so she just becomes this floating shape. And a lot of people have said to me, I don't want to look like a bin bag. So, you know, I'm here to fix that. Nobody should, look like a bin bag. So I decided, we needed to bring back shape into this. And I was looking at different poncho options and stuff like that. And I thought, well, why don't we make a trench coat? I love trench coats. I'm the proud owner of a much too big collection of trench coats. And so I thought, well, okay, what are the key issues here? And through the co-design process, we started to figure out what were the core problems. It was that they ride up. It was that people need somebody to lift them up so they can tuck the rest of the coat underneath them, for anybody that can't stand. That the sleeves get too dirty, that it's hard to actually pull the sleeves on, the buttons. So we identified all of the problems. And then it's up for me to come up with a solution for every single one of those problems. And so the core thing that is important about our wheelchair trench coats is that they are backless, basically. So from the waist down at the back, there is no material. So from the front, they look totally like a normal trench coat, but from the back, you don't have to tuck anything underneath you. And we recently actually tested the difference and the time it takes to put a regular coat on versus our coat. And it took 6 times longer to put a regular coat on versus the backless trench. So, it's not only independence, it's saving you time and it's saving you energy, saving your spoons, more importantly. And it looks really cool. And so I love the coat. We've done multiple colors of it, and the most recent version, we improved it even more. We made it even more water resistant, and we added a hood in because we had a lot of feedback of wanting a hood. But it's still, that hood is removable with magnets too, so it gives you all of that customization that people were after.
That's great.
Great.
My wife is the one who told me about your company. She found out about it online and she sent it to me, which I think means she wants me to be more stylish. So, do you have any
Let
general?
me just say before you go on, he needs
Okay,
a lot of help in that area.
sure. Thanks, buddy. Do you have any general fashion tips that you might recommend for comfort, function, or individuality, or all three?
Absolutely. I mean, I think you don't need to chase trends is always important to people, and that's what we try and focus on within Totem. Is we're creating core wardrobe staple pieces that are going to last you. It's always been really important to me because I have such a background and knowledge in design and tailoring. I'm a classically trained designer, that I make sure that all of the materials that we use are really high quality, and wearable and breathable is a big one. You never want to feel like you're wearing your clothing. So I think for anyone out there that's, struggling with clothing, they should look for things that feel soft, that feel stretchy, that are breathable, because the less you feel like you're wearing your clothing, the more you're going to enjoy wearing them. And always look out for elasticated waistbands or adjustable, because then your clothing can grow with you if you're having a bad day or a good day. You don't then need totally different outfits. And so that's what we always try and incorporate into our clothing. But you can definitely look out for, there's a lot of accidentally adaptive stuff out there floating around that you can find.
Awesome. I love it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for taking time to share with us. And I'm particularly glad that your granddad was an inspiration. And I'm just wondering what else you would like to share with others. Certainly, we our audience is made up of people with disabilities, but what's a word of inspiration you can share with them?
I think, Intotum, as you say, started for me because I saw a problem, and, that problem was never people's disabilities. It was that the fashion industry hadn't cared about us. It didn't wanna listen to us. And I decided to be a solution, but I truly couldn't do that without the amazing community that I've built around me, that suggest everything, that, cheer me on, that, even down to I'm trying to pick 2 colors, they pick which one. And so I think it's really important for everybody, whether they've got a business idea or they're just, struggling with something, to always find their community, because that is one thing I absolutely love about the disabled community is everyone I speak to is so welcoming. We've all got such different lived experiences, but we always want to share tips and tricks and hacks with each other. So my top tip is always to find your people.
Excellent.
Thank you again for joining us. This is Enable, the Disability Podcast. We're not defined solely by the things we can't do when there's so many things we can do. We are at Enable Podcast on social media. Please like, follow, and subscribe.
And please share this podcast with your family and friends so we can share stories about people with different abilities that bring us all together. Thank you.